She's hilarious, heartfelt, and now Emmy-nominated. Jessica Williams opens up about the moment she got the big news and what it's really like acting alongside the legendary Harrison Ford. Spoiler: he's not what you'd expect. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. Jessica Williams never expected the moment to come when her name would be uttered in the same breath as television's most celebrated performers, let alone for an Emmy nomination. The actress, comedian, and writer, beloved for her unique blend of sharp wit and emotional authenticity, had no idea her performance in Shrinking had made such a deep impact, until the moment her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She was doing something as mundane and unglamorous as folding laundry when the deluge began. First it was a call, then a text, then DMs and voicemails one after another, all echoing the same message: "Congratulations." Confused and caught completely off guard, Jessica thought maybe it was a mistake, a prank even. Surely someone else had been nominated. She hadn't heard anything official. There hadn't been any heads up from her team, no email, no pre-warning. It wasn't until she quickly pulled out her phone, opened a browser, and checked for herself that reality hit her like a wave. Her name was right there in bold: Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series. That was her. She was on the list. Jessica's knees went weak. In that surreal moment, the weight of more than a decade of relentless work, auditions, rehearsals, and self-doubt came crashing into her all at once. She sat down and let the moment wash over her. And then the tears came. "I cried," she later said in an interview. "Not even gonna lie. I cried like a baby." Who wouldn't? For years, Jessica had been one of those performers who consistently delivered brilliance, often flying just under the radar of mainstream acclaim. She wasn't new to the scene. Far from it. She had spent years building a reputation as one of the smartest, funniest, and most heartfelt voices in comedy. From her breakout role as the youngest correspondent ever on The Daily Show, to co-creating and starring in the hit podcast-turned-HBO special Two Dope Queens, Jessica always brought something undeniably special to her roles. Her comedy was sharp, socially aware, and laced with emotional intelligence. Her timing? Impeccable. Her presence? Unforgettable. But somehow, this particular performance in Shrinking, a dramedy that explores grief, love, and human connection, had touched something deeper in audiences and critics alike. In Shrinking, Jessica brought her character to life with such raw honesty and nuance that it was impossible to look away. She played her role with a careful balance of humor and vulnerability, making audiences laugh one moment and tear up the next. Her character wasn't a caricature or a sidekick. She was layered, complex, real. And that performance, grounded, warm, and deeply human, resonated with people. Jessica didn't chase validation. That was never her style. But to be seen, really seen, for something she put her heart and soul into, was a feeling she found hard to put into words. For years, Jessica had navigated Hollywood with grace, resilience, and an unshakable sense of self. She had faced the industry's ups and downs, often being the only Black woman in the room, pushing through invisible barriers with fierce determination and quiet confidence. She had turned down roles that didn't align with her values and poured her energy into projects that meant something. And now, here she was, not just being noticed, but celebrated. This nomination felt different. It wasn't just a professional milestone. It was personal. It was a moment of validation, not just for the performance, but for the path she had taken, the choices she had made, and the artist she had become. As the news spread, fans and fellow artists flooded social media with messages of support and admiration. Many shared clips from Shrinking, tagging her with messages like, "Finally," and "Long overdue." It was clear that this nomination didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of years of consistent excellence. It was a recognition of talent that had been there all along, a spotlight finally catching up with someone who had been shining from the start. For Jessica, the nomination was more than just a career highlight. It was a turning point, a reminder that staying true to your voice, even when it feels like the world isn't paying attention, is always worth it. She didn't need a trophy to prove her worth. But being nominated, being acknowledged, meant the world. And for fans who had followed her journey since the early days, it felt like a victory not just for Jessica, but for every artist who had ever doubted whether their work would ever be seen. "I didn't even know I was nominated," she had said with a laugh, "until my phone exploded." And in that beautiful, chaotic moment of laundry and tears and disbelief, Jessica Williams stepped into a new chapter, one where the world had finally caught up to what many had known all along. She's a star. When Jessica Williams first got her hands on the script for Shrinking, something clicked. As she turned the pages, she could feel that this wasn't just another comedy series. It had layers: grief, humor, healing, and humanity all woven together in a way that felt fresh and meaningful. The Apple TV Plus series, created by Bill Lawrence, Brett Goldstein, and Jason Segel, centers around a therapist who, overwhelmed by personal loss, begins to break professional norms and tell his clients exactly what he thinks. It was edgy, poignant, and unafraid to tread into emotional territory that most comedies shy away from. And in the midst of it all was Gabby, the character Jessica was being asked to bring to life. A therapist, like the protagonist, but with her own complex story, her own scars, and her own vibrant personality. Gabby was immediately intriguing. She wasn't the stereotypical best friend or comic relief. She was a fully realized human being, bold, loud, loving, opinionated, and sometimes gloriously messy. Jessica knew instantly this was a role she could sink her teeth into. "It was the first time I played a character who was messy," she later reflected, "but in a way that felt honest." Gabby is bold, she's loud, she's caring, and she's not afraid to speak her mind. That honesty, that refusal to present a polished, perfect version of womanhood, was what made Gabby resonate. She was layered, like real people are. She could be stubborn and flawed, but also deeply empathetic and loyal to the people she loved. What made Jessica's portrayal so powerful was how much of herself she brought into it. Her comedic timing, honed from years on The Daily Show and in her stand-up career, made the character pop with energy. But it was the emotional depth she gave Gabby, the subtle glances, the vulnerable moments, the scenes where her guard dropped, that left a lasting impression on viewers. Jessica wasn't just acting, she was being. She took her own life experiences, her own emotional palette, and infused them into every line, every scene. And it showed. Critics quickly took notice. Reviews of Shrinking often pointed to Jessica's performance as a standout in an already stellar ensemble cast. She didn't just hold her own, she elevated the material. She brought warmth and grit to a role that could have easily been one-dimensional in lesser hands. But more importantly, audiences connected with her. People weren't just entertained, they were moved. They saw parts of themselves in Gabby. They related to her heartbreak, her humor, her resilience. For Jessica, that connection was the most rewarding part of the entire experience. "People came up to me and said, 'I felt seen,'" she shared in an interview. "That's when I knew we'd done something right." It wasn't about the praise or the spotlight. It was about impact, about telling a story that made people feel less alone. In a world that often rushes to tie up emotions in neat little bows, Shrinking dared to sit in the discomfort, to laugh through the tears, to explore what healing really looks like. And Jessica was at the heart of that. Being part of Shrinking also marked a shift in Jessica's career. It allowed her to break away from the comedic boxes she had sometimes been placed in and show the full range of her abilities. The show's balance of humor and drama gave her the space to stretch, to challenge herself, and to evolve as an artist. It proved that she wasn't just funny, she was a powerhouse. And behind the scenes, Jessica became a true collaborator. She worked closely with the writers and creators to shape Gabby's journey, offering insights that deepened the character. It was a creative partnership that brought out the best in everyone involved. The energy on set, she would later say, was electric, a mix of mutual respect, artistic freedom, and shared purpose. Everyone knew they were creating something special, something that went beyond entertainment. In the end, Jessica's work on Shrinking wasn't just a role, it was a statement. A statement about the importance of authenticity in storytelling. A statement about allowing women, especially black women, to be full, messy, powerful characters on screen. And a statement about her own evolution as an artist. What started as just reading a script turned into a transformative chapter in her life. One that earned her critical acclaim, an Emmy nomination, and most importantly, a deeper connection with the people watching at home. Because for Jessica Williams, shrinking was never just about laughs. It was about truth. And in telling that truth, she helped others feel seen and maybe just a little more understood. Now let's talk about the man, the myth, the legend, Harrison Ford. For Jessica Williams, working alongside one of the most iconic figures in Hollywood wasn't just surreal. It was transformational. She didn't just appear in the same show. She shared scenes with him. She traded jokes. She matched his presence with her own. And through it all, she learned not just about acting, but about presence, humility, and truth. When I found out Harrison Ford was in the cast, I nearly fainted, Jessica admitted with a laugh. I mean, Han Solo? Indiana Jones? Are you kidding me? For someone who had grown up watching Ford's legendary performances, the idea of working with him felt like a dream, one she didn't quite believe until she saw him in person on set. But what struck her wasn't the weight of his reputation or his larger-than-life filmography. It was how completely normal he was. Kind, grounded, a little sarcastic, and, perhaps most unexpectedly, hilarious. He has this dry humor that sneaks up on you, she recalled. He'll say something completely deadpan, and it'll take you a second to realize he just made a joke. And then you're laughing harder than you thought you would. But beneath that wit, Jessica saw something deeper, generosity. Not just as a person, but as a scene partner. He listens. He gives you space. He makes you feel like you belong. That last part meant the world to her. Because no matter how long you've been in the business, sharing the screen with someone of Harrison Ford's caliber can be intimidating. Jessica had already made a name for herself, but stepping onto a set with someone who had defined generations of cinema was another level entirely. And yet, Harrison never made her feel like she had to prove herself. Instead, he created an environment where collaboration thrived and ego took a back seat. There was one day in particular that would stay with Jessica forever. It was during the filming of a difficult emotional scene. Jessica had prepared intensely, but when the cameras rolled, something wasn't landing. She could feel it. The emotion wasn't flowing. The connection wasn't there. The pressure began to mount, and self-doubt started to creep in. She began questioning everything. Her choices, her instincts, even whether she was cut out for a moment like this. That's when Harrison quietly stepped in. Without making a scene or drawing attention, he pulled her aside between takes. He didn't offer a long lecture or a technical note. Instead, he looked her in the eye and said, "Don't try to be perfect. Just be true." Those 7 words hit Jessica like a lightning bolt. They were simple, but they carried the weight of experience, decades of navigating roles, characters, pressure, and expectations. And in that moment, she realized she had been chasing precision instead of honesty. Try to nail the emotion instead of just feeling it. That's when it clicked for me, she later said. Acting isn't about getting it right. It's about being honest. Something shifted after that day. Jessica stopped trying to impress. She stopped holding back. She let go of the idea of doing it right and leaned fully into the truth of her character. Her performance transformed, not just in that scene, but in every scene that followed. You could see it in her eyes, in her posture, in her timing. There was a freedom and vulnerability that deepened her work and connected with audiences in a powerful way. Working with Harrison Ford had given her more than just great stories to tell at parties. It had given her a new lens through which to view her craft. He didn't try to teach or direct. He simply modeled what it looked like to be present, to be giving, and to be real. And in doing so, he gave Jessica a piece of wisdom that would stay with her for the rest of her career. She often talks about that moment with gratitude, not because it came from a Hollywood legend, but because it came from a fellow actor who saw her, supported her, and reminded her of something she already had inside. From that point forward, Jessica trusted herself more deeply. Her confidence didn't come from praise or recognition, but from knowing she was showing up honestly, fully, without pretense. And it showed. Her portrayal of Gabby in Shrinking became richer, more grounded, and even more magnetic. Because in the end, the best actors aren't just technically skilled, they're true. And thanks to a quiet moment and a few powerful words from Harrison Ford, Jessica Williams stepped into her truth with more strength than ever before. With Emmy buzz comes attention, and lots of it. Suddenly, Jessica Williams found herself at the center of the spotlight. Interviews, red carpets, magazine spreads, social media chatter, camera flashes at every turn. And while much of it was exciting, it also came with intense scrutiny. Endless eyes watching your every move, every word, every outfit, every expression. But even in the middle of all the glitz, Jessica never lost her footing. She stayed grounded in the same principles that had carried her through over a decade in the entertainment industry: honesty, humility, and authenticity. She didn't try to reinvent herself to fit the mold of a typical award season star. She didn't curate some polished, perfect version of herself for public consumption. Instead, she continued doing what she's always done, keeping it real. Whether she was on a talk show, backstage at an event, or simply posting on Instagram, Jessica remained unapologetically herself. And people noticed. Her fans, old and new, were drawn not just to her talent, but to her honesty. In a sea of Hollywood polish, she was refreshingly human. People think when you get nominated, your life changes overnight, Jessica said in one interview. It doesn't. You still have to deal with self-doubt. You still have to do the work. That kind of transparency was rare in the industry. While others might pretend that success had erased their insecurities, Jessica pulled back the curtain. She talked openly about the pressure, the kind that doesn't go away just because your name is trending or your face is on a billboard. In fact, in some ways, it got worse. Because now, the stakes felt even higher. Jessica spoke candidly about the added pressure she faced as a Black woman in Hollywood. There's this unspoken rule that you have to be twice as good to get half the credit, she said. I've felt that my whole career, from her early days as a correspondent on The Daily Show to her scene-stealing role in Shrinking, she had always been aware of the invisible standards that seemed to move the goalposts for people who looked like her. There was always that extra layer of needing to prove yourself, of needing to be perfect, just to be seen as equal. But now, with the platform she had earned, Jessica wasn't interested in just surviving those pressures. She wanted to use her voice to change the narrative. She began mentoring young actors, especially women of color, helping them navigate the complexities of the industry with confidence and courage. She offered advice, but more importantly, she offered space. Space to be vulnerable, to be unsure, to ask questions without judgment. She remembered what it felt like to be starting out, unsure of whether you belonged. And she made it her mission to remind others that they did. She also began speaking out more openly about mental health in the entertainment industry, a topic still too often ignored. She talked about therapy, burnout, anxiety, and the emotional toll of constantly being on. In a world where appearances are everything, Jessica was brave enough to say, "Actually, I'm struggling too." And in doing so, she gave others permission to be honest about their own experiences. It wasn't about being a celebrity. It was about being a person who felt deeply, who worked hard, and who refused to hide behind a facade of perfection. If my journey can help someone believe in themselves, then all the stress, all the struggle, it's worth it, she said. That belief became a driving force in her life. She wasn't just chasing roles or accolades anymore. She was building something bigger, a legacy, one that wasn't defined by awards or fame, but by impact. Jessica began supporting women in comedy, advocating for more inclusive writers' rooms, and using her platform to spotlight underrepresented voices. She championed authenticity in storytelling, pushing for narratives that reflected real life: messy, complicated, diverse, and beautiful. And in doing so, she became more than an actress. She became a leader, a role model, a force. Success didn't change Jessica Williams. It amplified who she already was: passionate, thoughtful, fearless, and deeply committed to making the industry better for those coming after her. She never asked for perfection. She asked for truth. And through that truth, she's not just shining. She's lighting the way for others. With her Emmy nomination now secured and Hollywood finally giving her the recognition she's long deserved, everyone's asking the same question: what's next for Jessica Williams? After over a decade of consistent, standout work, from her trailblazing stint on The Daily Show to her scene-stealing role in Shrinking, Jessica is standing at a pivotal moment in her career, and she's not rushing anything. For her, the next step isn't about riding a wave of hype. It's about purpose, about meaning, and about staying true to her voice. "I want to tell stories that feel human," she says, "that make people laugh, cry, think, all at the same time." It's a simple statement, but it captures the essence of what makes Jessica so compelling. She's not interested in surface-level storytelling or chasing roles just for prestige. She's interested in depth, in characters that reflect the complexity of real life, in scripts that aren't afraid to explore uncomfortable truths, and in projects that leave people feeling something long after the credits roll. That's why she's taking a hands-on approach to her future. Jessica is currently developing her own projects, not just as an actress, but as a writer and producer. She wants to be involved from the ground up, shaping narratives that center voices and perspectives that often go unheard. It's a natural evolution for someone who has always brought intention to her work. She understands the power of storytelling, and she's determined to use it for good. Whether it's a dark comedy, a tender drama, or something totally genre-defying, Jessica wants her work to challenge expectations and invite audiences into something real. And while the spotlight grows brighter, she's staying grounded, thanks in part to the unlikely friendship she's developed with none other than Harrison Ford. What began as a working relationship on Shrinking has blossomed into something much more meaningful. Every once in a while, I'll get a random text from him, she says, smiling. Usually something like, "Good work, kid." And honestly, that means everything. To have a Hollywood icon not just acknowledge your talent, but support and encourage it is no small thing. Especially in an industry where so many emerging voices struggle to find mentorship, Jessica considers Harrison's belief in her to be a gift, one that's helped bolster her own confidence as she steps into this new phase of her journey. He's no longer just the legend she looked up to as a kid. He's become a mentor, a sounding board, and most importantly, a reminder that even at the highest levels of success, kindness and humility still matter. Jessica Williams is no longer the underdog. She's no longer waiting in the wings. She's here, fully arrived, fully seen, and fully owning her space in the industry. She's a force, a voice, a creative powerhouse who's not only capable of leading shows, but also of shaping the cultural conversations they spark. The days of being underestimated are over. This Emmy nomination may be the first, but it certainly won't be the last. She knows that success in Hollywood can be fleeting, but she's not interested in flash-in-the-pan fame. She's in this for the long haul, not just to act, but to create, to build, to inspire. And the beautiful part? She's already doing it. Young actors are looking up to her. Women in comedy are finding a voice through her example. And viewers are watching her work and saying, "That's me. I feel seen." That kind of impact goes beyond trophies. So if this Emmy nod is just the beginning, and all signs suggest it is, then Hollywood better buckle up. Jessica Williams isn't just on a rise. She's rewriting the playbook, breaking ceilings, and bringing others up with her. She's not waiting for the next big role to define her. She's defining it for herself. And if you've been inspired by Jessica's journey, by her talent, her honesty, her resilience, then now's your moment. Hit that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe for more powerful stories from the stars who are changing the game. And tell us, backhand index pointing down, do you think Jessica Williams deserves that Emmy? We sure do.